Welcome to Warriors at Work. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. Warriors at Work is a place where everyone in the workplace can come together, gain insight, encouragement, tell stories, connect, and share wisdom. We are a place of like-minded people at different stages of life, all coming together with a shared interest of enlightening and inspiring one another. If you're interested in going from the predictable to the potent, and you want to find your warrior magic, step into the journey with us. Welcome to Warriors at Work. So welcome to Warriors at Work. Hi everyone, it's Jeannie. Thrilled to be back here with you. I'm also really happy to bring to you a series of conversations from my Warriors at Work community who have pivoted themselves, their businesses, stepping more into their purpose over 2020. And today's the first of many conversations to come, talking about people who have done just that have really stepped into their purpose and have pivoted their business model in reaction to what's happening in the world. And I'm thrilled to have with me here today the CEO of Hughes Productions, Rory Hughes. So Rory, thanks so much for
Hello.
being here today.
Thank you.
So
And boom.
and boom, which we're going to get to in just a
Yeah.
second. I can't wait to tell you about Rory because the story is so interesting.
Thank
So
you.
his is a story of a Dublin-based theater director and educator who pivoted to use their love of theater as fuel in creating something from nothing. And Rory's love of musical theater started in college, Syracuse University. Did a lot of things locally. And then in 2010, he moved across the Atlantic to Ireland, my mother country, and performed across the country and a dancer in one of my favorite shows, Penny Dreadful.
Yep.
He's also created, obviously, Hughes Productions in 2014 to create top-of-the-line workshops for students in Ireland, but also bring more theater and dance into mainstream. He has brought over a plethora of Broadway stars, more than I could probably even recount. And then he had this huge pivot. In the middle of the world's lockdown, he saw obviously what was happening to the world of theater, and he created Boom. And that intention is to connect the whole world with theater right in your living room. He's been
Exactly.
featured in the Irish Times, the Irish Daily Mail, and Playbill. So Rory, I cannot wait to get into this conversation. I'm like bubbling
Me too.
over.
Me as well.
So let's start with this.
Hmm.
Tell us the story of Boom. So talk to me about, like, where did you begin? What was that moment where you said, oh my goodness, I need to do this. I need to step into this. And this is what this might look like.
Well, essentially, because I'd already had Hughes Productions, I'd always wanted to try and figure out how to use my network to bring Broadway to Ireland and try to connect people to Broadway. Ireland for musical theater needed something more in general. And on March 13th, I think it was, I flew to London because a school that I was associated with was performing at Move It, which was a huge dance convention, not competition, convention of college programs. And we were the first Irish school to go over and perform on the main stage, which was huge. And for teenagers to have this experience is massive. But they left in the morning. I arrived in the evening, and all of a sudden, when I landed, the event was canceled.
Wow.
So literally landed, events was canceled, ran to the desk for Ryanair, switched my flight to the next day, just went to my friend's house to see Prince of Egypt as well. So I got to see one of the final West End shows before they all closed. It was a wonderful show. And then I came back on the 14th, and right by March 17th, 18th is when I said, we got to do something, because even shutting down for 2 weeks, I was like, there's got to be, I didn't, inside, I was like, this isn't going to last for just 2 weeks. Something was telling me this is going to be a lot longer than 2 weeks, even longer than a month. And I was thinking there's got to be something It sounds silly. I was like, there's got to be something better than this from Sweet Charity. Because all my friends were, obviously the shows were closing down. Broadway, West End was closing down. A lot of the shows around the world tours were starting to shut down. Theater was taking a hit. People were out of jobs. I'm a teacher, so I was out of a job. My husband's an Irish dance teacher, and his work was gone, just because you couldn't be in large groups. Everything was in lockdown. Ireland, thankfully at the time, was one of the first countries really to really lock down and take it seriously. So for 2 weeks, oh, and I came up with the title of the company, Boom, because it literally exploded in my head. And I was thinking, how can I utilize that into masterclasses and workshops? So it became Broadway official online masterclass, where we can now connect any Broadway star around the world, and people can connect to it from their living room, taking classes in dance and singing and acting. Right now we have an upcoming composer writer series. So any composers or writers that want to work with the Broadway masters, you get one-on-one chance to present your song, your lyrics, your book, and you get feedback.
It's
And one of the
beautiful.
biggest names is Andrew Lippa, who wrote Addams Family, Big Fish, The Wild Party. And a lot of Americans would know probably John McDaniel, who is the musical director for Rosie O'Donnell Show. So
Wow.
they're the ones that are going to be helping people with their songs and their book and their lyrics. And it's pretty incredible. We're trying to get all avenues of theater somehow touched on, if you will, so that even if people backstage want to learn more about the backstage process of lighting or stage managing or sound, that we can provide it at Boom, basically. So it basically exploded in my head, and I literally worked for 2 weeks nonstop. The husband's like, "Where are you?" I was like, in this room, actually, where I am sitting, working for 2 weeks to launch by April 1st.
So was that a self-imposed deadline? You were like, by April 1st, this is what I want to have done.
Yes. And I also was like, April, because if things were going to start to turn around, let's say even in May, for going back even into being in person, we still wanted to have something for people to, at least for the future, to continue with. And that's what we're really looking forward is from now on, is how do we still keep ourselves relevant even when we start going back into the classroom eventually.
Right. This whole process fascinates me because I'm a very logical person, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking about like when you think of, so Boom was the idea in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you begin? Did you sit down and say, okay, because theater to me sounds like a very broad idea, right? So when you
Yeah.
think of theater, did you sit with a list and say, these are the first 3 people I'm going to call, I'm going to ask them, because you had to rally them around this idea?
It wasn't even just the first 3. I just started calling all the people that I knew. Just
Wow.
being like, hey, I came up with this idea. We're going to be launching. Would you want to be part of it? They're monthly members. We're paying this much for pre-records. If we have live classes, it'll be this amount, which we're still modifying here and there a little bit, but with payment. But it's to support the out-of-work artists. And then we also, when we have profits, eventually soon, when we have profits coming in, we will then support Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS and a charity in Ireland that will help out of work actors as well. Or if in 2 or 3 years time, let's say someone's injured on the job and they still need help with bills, it's the Artists Emergency Relief Fund through a theater here in Dublin, actually, that we can build it to help them be able to, pay for medical bills, pay some of the bills while they're on leave because they got injured at work or something.
You got into service to the theater community because you said this is helping out of work people, and that we're not even at a place where we're generating the profits yet, but that is of course the intention because it is a business.
Yes.
So that to me is also amazing. So you didn't necessarily look at yourself, you looked at the arts to say,
Yeah.
we have to keep this going, this is too important.
Yeah.
And I know anybody that's listening or watching that's either has a relationship to the theater community or just has a love of it.
Hmm.
I'm sort of blown away by this. And then the names of the people that must be in your Rolodex is
Yeah.
something to behold. So you got on the phone, you started calling all of your colleagues and friends. What do you think? And I would imagine that you got everybody really excited about the
Yeah.
idea. And then where did you begin? What did you kick off with?
We kicked off with, um, and one of the biggest things was, everyone will understand that you were pre-recording classes for 30 minutes, in your living room. So if it was a dance class, it was in your living room. If it's talking about your voice or acting, it would be in obviously someplace in your house because that's all where we could be. Um, so we started off with our monthly memberships, and then we took the first 2 weeks in April after that to then plan our first live class, which was another stream of income for the artists as well. So for example, our first one was we're sanctioned and kind of associated with the Verdon Fosse estate for Fosse Legacy Master Classes. So Lloyd Culbreth at the middle end of April taught his first live Fosse class worldwide.
Wow.
We were in 11 countries, nearly 30 people taking the class, which was phenomenal. Everyone dancing around the world in their living rooms together, learning Fosse. And the
Wow.
most amazing thing was a woman in Australia stayed up until midnight, put the kids and the husband to bed, and stayed up until midnight to take the class. Because otherwise, for Fosse class, to learn how to do Fosse the right way with the Fosse Legacy Masterclass with the 12 teachers, you have to go to the States. So for her, this was
Hmm.
so exciting that she could do that and learn from Australia all the way from New York.
You know what I was thinking about when you were just describing that is I think about these poignant moments, just you as a human being in the world and what you're putting forward. Like, how has this impacted your life? Being able to bring Boom to life and to see something that was an idea actually happen and then
Yeah.
helping people. What is that like?
April was the like, oh my God, what did we just do? It was kind of like, wow, we did that. And the first Fosse class, I actually got a bit emotional because even the contact that I'm talking with in the Verdon Fosse estate, who's in charge, she was like, isn't this beautiful that we're dancing around the world together? And I had to put myself on mute at the time because I started choking up about it.
Mm.
And I was actually trying to help him with a conversation as well. So I was trying to not be in the recording, like being like, because I got like really upset, emotional because it meant a lot. And there's going to be in the past 6 months, which is crazy as well. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of stuff that we still need to go through with growth. We need to still figure out a few certain things within the company and how to make it really technically quote unquote boom so it can go to the next level and to keep us going into the future 5-10 years from now, that boom becomes a staple of theater connecting around the world kind of idea. But it's still now that you ask me that question, it's kind of like still crazy in some ways,
Mm.
because there's still so much that I have to do, if that makes sense. But it's still
Mm.
like, look what we did in 6 months. So we are paying, the Broadway stars. We're paying artists that are literally at home with nothing, no work.
Mm.
A lot of them are trying to teach anywhere that they can because there's no work. So
Right.
they were so excited that I was able to create this.
Oh,
Um,
so beautiful. I mean, it's just so beautiful on so many levels. And I was
and to
also
help in the
wonder,
future, then it's hopefully the future. It's me then setting up my future of being able to have an income besides teaching, because
well,
sometimes the self-employed teaching is wonderful, but it doesn't pay enough, if that makes sense.
right. Well, actually, that's an interesting question because I'm
Yeah.
thinking about just the evolution of this world pandemic, right? We was saying this in a lot of different conversations. It's requiring a tremendous amount of endurance and compassion, self-compassion, but also
Yeah.
compassion for other people.
Oh, completely.
And when you think about it, not knowing the end date, not knowing what we're working towards, it can be very, very difficult. So I'd love your thoughts around what do you see for the theater industry? What could this look like?
Wow, that's a difficult question because there's still unknown, quote unquote, Frozen 2.
Mm,
Literally, there is so much unknown to what's happening. I mean, the goal, obviously, we hope that by the new year, we're back to like Broadway and West End can start to reopen. There's 6 theaters in the West End that are supposedly trying to open by next month, with social distancing and all that kind of stuff. But will it actually succeed? We don't know. Will that actually be a model for Broadway? But the problem with social distancing in a theater is that the producers won't be able to actually make ends meet that way as well. So that's one of the biggest problems. It's that you need usually 65% capacity to really start making ends meet, and then after that you start making the profits. And Hamilton and the Wicked and all those that always are sold out. When they
mm,
drop, even they never really drop below 90 or 99% usually, but 65%, if you think about it, in social distancing, that would mean that they would they probably would have to reduce to 50% capacity. So they
wow.
wouldn't even break even with what the costs are to do the show, the payments for the cast, the backstage, all the costs of the set, everything. It's a
Mm,
lot that goes into it. Like a show per week can range from a play probably can range from 300,000 per week that they're spending on doing the show, and some of the bigger ones it's like up to 750,000 a week. So they need that
wow.
million something coming in to make it end meet, and then have a little extra profit. So it's kind of like we don't know, but I mean, for Boom, we really, really want to, and also that's another thing is when they start going back to work, which is wonderful, then it's starting to really figure out how will they be able to help us win Boom when their schedule is back to 8 shows a week, and what
Hmm.
days are they available to teach for us if it's during the day. If we have a bigger following in Australia, do we have an Australian time frame where it's the morning at least for the Broadway star, it's evening there, or like early morning for them, I mean, because they're a whole day ahead,
Right.
so that they can still do their 8 shows a week, but they're doing some Boom stuff during the day when they're not working, and on not on the 2-day shows either.
You hit on some things that I also think are really important is for anybody that's listening or watching. It isn't just the acting and the dancing that's a part of the theater. You shared
No.
with me when we talked prior to this, you talked to me about a lot of the nuances around the production that you also offer as part of Boom. So
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so an example is I have 2 friends that provide lighting design um, tutorials for Boom for our monthly members. And it could be just like, how do you light a room when you're on Zoom? How do you light a room when you need to film something for an audition? And then little tips for theaters out besides Broadway, the regional theaters or small community theaters, amateur theaters. How can you utilize LED lights
Mm.
for the theater, which will be less expensive for the theater and as an overall package? Then we have Kat West, another friend who's a off Broadway stage manager, and she's been doing how do you do stage management um, through Boom with classes. We're getting week 3 from her shortly.
Mm.
Um, she has 2 weeks worth of that. And the beginning of everything in April, she did a lovely how to organize your life, because stage managers have to organize their own life and everyone's life throughout the production. So it was like, how do you organize what you need to do to get through COVID, and She did a whole entire session about that. Like, you need at the front door, you have your box with all your COVID stuff and your hand sanitizer, and this is what you kind of do. We hope to be able to get into more costume design, more sound design. We had a great interview and Q&A with a Claire Garvey, who's an Irish costume designer who designed the outfit that the latest or conductor for the Oscars, the woman, the first woman that did, she's
Wow.
Irish. So she designed that outfit that she wore for the conducting. So I did a Q&A about her process as a costume designer, like during COVID, what she's doing as a costume designer, because there's not, she has a shop in Dublin, but it's closed. So what was she doing? And she was actually designing with whatever materials she had at home, and trying to make sure that she was still being creative at the same time. So that was kind of exciting that she even was like, I didn't want to let it take my creativity away in some respects.
You know,
Uh,
so many of the things that you're saying strike me as you're not only bringing forth this just love of theater. This is something you embody. You're also able to marry it with your business acumen and your ability to manage a lot of logistics. But then by the
yeah,
same token, the community that you're creating, you're helping so many people who, where would they be going? What would they be doing if they didn't have some outlet to share with the world their gifts?
yeah,
So,
exactly.
and it seems to be tapping into so many aspects of yourself that you probably didn't even have consciousness to all that you
Probably
know.
not.
And now it's putting you in a place where you not only can access it, but then you can be in service to other people and serve such a greater good. And then I'm also wondering, when the world returns and we're back in some sort of state of
The new
engagement back.
normal.
Yeah, I hate that term. I like to just call it like when we are living the new experience, right?
Oh, I like that. I'm going to write that down.
We're
Living the new
living the new
experience.
experience.
Yeah.
How would you like Boom to play in? What would be the ideal?
Well, I do feel that online is the future in general. We are going to have to become used to it. Obviously, in-person interaction will never, nothing will replace that. When we know that going forward, um, but to connect the Broadway and West End with the world and people that follow them, because not everyone can afford to go to New York or to go to London to see shows. But they love theater. They love their local area that they perform with. They love the star that they hear on the recording. So it's really making sure that we can still give them that access. And then figuring out from that point on is with Boom, how do we, and we get the living new experience, how do we formulate Boom to continue on even beyond just online? So is it then when we have a bigger following and a bigger acumen, I should say, maybe, that we are able to then bring the stars around the world? You know, some of the
Mm.
stars, we can bring them around Europe and be able to travel with them and, you know, be able to do a concert with them, but then teach at the same time. Maybe there'll be enough that we'd be able to go, hey, we have a whole following in Australia. Let's get Fosse and some other Broadway stars to Australia to do a whole tour around Australia so that people that cannot make it out to New York, they still
Mm.
get that experience of Broadway stars. And one of the biggest ones that worked so far for us was Sierra Boggess, who's so well known around the world from her playing Christine Daae in Phantom. She's massive around the world because of that. But you know, you have the other people, the likes of like Laura Osnes, Telly, Leung, Nikki Snelson. Nikki actually teaches all over the world anyway, um, for herself. But just having her from Legally Blonde, Laura Bell Bundy, Rochelle Rack, having those names is just humbling that they're willing to do it. Even Obelazada just had a class, which was phenomenal. And she may be young, but she has so much knowledge for her age. And she's so in tune to what um, about herself now. And that's very For 20, she started in 2014 is when she started the West End revival of Miss Saigon at like 18 years old. So, um, for her to have that intuition about herself and the business and all that, obviously living through it and learning firsthand and fast because of being thrown into a huge revival of Miss Saigon at 18 years old. But then tomorrow we have Taylor Louderman from Mean Girls that everyone knows and loves. um, and she's the one that plays Regina George. But it's exciting that we're trying to really make sure that we can stay um, creating, if that makes sense, creating and employing artists, because also, and once we do go back to the new experience, Broadway, some of the shows have closed. So the people don't have a show to go back to. Like Frozen on Broadway is now closed. All those people don't have a show to go back to. So they still need work. Beetlejuice just closed once COVID happened, so they're done. So they will still need work. They have to go audition for the next show. Um, you know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
so I mean, there's always going to be a time where they will need work in between shows as well, where we'll say, "Hey, your roster will be able to go a little bit higher this month or so with Boom, because we will need more from you because you have the time." And then it could, once they get a show again, it could be like once or twice every 2 months that they're able to, as opposed to like, "Hey, we got these people for even more classes because their show closed," you know.
You're like the
And also
shepherd.
tapping into schools to tap into us. That's our future.
That's something that I was going to ask you about. You're
Yes.
like the master shepherd of Broadway stars,
I
the
write that
people that
down.
you just were like, oh yeah, and then oh yeah, and then this one, and then Mean Girls, and then like it's sort of, my mind has just been blown by the access that you're serving up to the world. And you brought up schools, and I know we
Yes.
talked about, there's huge opportunity to be able to stream in live to studios
Yes.
anywhere in the world, which I
And
think is
we've
a
done that already
brilliant.
once.
Okay. I think it's a
We're Studio
brilliant,
Ghibli.
brilliant, brilliant idea. I'm curious in your opinion. So, Rory, if you're talking to someone who is a musical theater major in college right now,
Yes.
what advice, ideas, of thoughts could you throw at them?
Well, I think one of the biggest advice for like a musical theater senior, especially, is I think what they musical theater programs is don't really teach you about the business side. And I think it's that it's a forgotten entity, that it is called show business for a reason. So I think that with Boom is that we can also offer them insights to, and that's one of the biggest things is about the business and the business side, and also that's also maintaining yourself for 8 shows a week, because
Mm,
vocally, physically, 8 shows a week is very demanding. So some people don't realize, once you leave college, the demand of being perfect on stage 8 shows a week, it has its toll vocally, it has its toll physically. So you have to take care of yourself in a different way than you previously probably have thought. But also the business side, and that's one thing I want to make sure we can also tap into, is the business side, saying, "Hey, this is the stuff that you need to know about when you're gearing up for your first round of taxes." That's stuff that I had no idea what I was doing when I was that age, going out there going, "What do I do?" And I
yeah.
still think kids today still don't know, the write-offs, the benefits, what you need to do with headshots and CVs, how to make them stand out, how to make sure, like in Ireland, making sure it's not black and white anymore. Ireland's a little behind on that. And I'm always like telling my students here, like, please do not do black and white photos. It's all color. If you want to be found outside of Ireland, in London, New York, and in today's social media world, you need to have color photos.
So you could end up having like a business school for the arts as part of
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, and then also we want to also have professional level of classes for professionals. People have just left college, people that are still auditioning in New York, but they still need. But even professionals on Broadway, like let's have it that they might need an acting class. They obviously they'll go to possibly someone in person, but professionals around the country of the US, around the country of UK, around the world that are performing, still you still need to train. So it's offering them a higher level of classes so that they can keep training while they are working, and then when we get back to the new experience, quote unquote.
I love
If
it.
that makes sense. So having that different level, because sometimes it is um, like some of the classes we do have a lot more mixed and sometimes younger in the classes, which is fine. But the older and more people that have been doing it for a little while, we want to make sure we start challenging them as well. But we have had professionals in our dance classes, which has
Wow.
been fun.
I
Just
love that you highlighted that because those are all really important distinctions in this process, but also in your scale and how you're evolving your business model too, is to think
yeah.
about all of the people and experiences around this idea. It
Mm.
isn't just let me get uh, Broadway stars and all of the people around the production involved, but it's what about everyone else
Yeah, well, I mean,
that
abroad, like the composing and writing series. There's Broadway stars that have been performing that probably could be writing a musical, and they just need to learn how to get the feedback on that end. So we just say, we have this writing series, so come and learn about it. Learn from the stars that and Broadway masters that have done it. Um, you might know about music and composition to a certain degree, but you might not know how to structure a musical. So
mm,
that's why we can be like, hey, we can help you with that. So we actually have that starting October 17th, and we're like, hey, we technically only have 15 that can take the class,
okay.
and that could be pairs of people as well, like a writer and a composer that come into to the room together. That's
Okay.
15 total. So it could be like 8 to 10 groups, but there's 15 people taking it.
So let's just talk logistics for a second. So let's
Yes.
say I'm watching or listening and I was like, this sounds amazing.
Hmm.
What is this like? What do I do?
Right. So it's boommasterclass.com, and we're also going to be implementing BroadwayOnlineClass.com shortly. So you'll be able to find us both that way. And we are $10.99 for a monthly membership, where you will have access to nearly 80 classes now, which is huge.
Wow.
80 online classes for 6 months, which still blows my mind. um, and then you also receive discounts for our live classes. And a yearly membership is 120 euro, or actually like it's like for this it's 120 euro, 10.99 euro, an average of $13 a month, which is not a lot. It's pretty affordable. And then it's about $145 a month for the year, so that's not too bad. We're trying to make it still affordable for people, if that makes sense. We might be implementing a new level where it's like premium, where a live class or two will be included in the price. So you just let us know which one you want to be a part of. And then the live classes are open to anybody in the world, so you don't have to be a member to take those. We just thought it would be great to have a members. If you are interested in all aspects of theater, you have 80 classes to be able to watch and learn and dance, and sometimes you want to go back one or two times later to go, what did that person say again?
Mm-hmm.
I remember I wrote it down, but I'm not sure if I got it completely, fully. And it's also just, if you are an actor, like going to we have we have a woman who does New York from stage to film, um, how to attack your monologue going into a film audition as opposed to the stage, how to light your audition for a film audition versus and utilize your mobile phone and making sure it's landscape, just little things like that.
Mm.
How do you learn lines? And then we have
tricks of the trade.
Yeah, and then we have acting classes on how to warm up your voice vocally and prepare yourself as a vocal actor as opposed to a musical theater singer. And then we'll be going into like Shakespeare, how to attack Shakespeare classes. So there's all these types of classes, and we have like probably. But it's also all the live classes are uploaded for members. So even if they take the class live, they can go back to it 2 weeks later once it goes up on the website and go, oh, I really want to rehearse that number again. I want to relearn it, or I want to just keep working on it just for my own sake. Or if it's the acting and singing class, they can, if they're a member, they go, I remember I worked with Sierra or Laura on something, and they said something to me that I missed and I didn't write it down because I was so focused on working with them, that they can go back and rewatch it.
Love it. So we talked about a lot of different things here today.
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful that you exist and that you've put this out into the world.
Thank you for having me on that.
When you think about anybody who's watching or listening, what's the thing you want everyone to remember about Rory and Boom?
What's the thing to remember? That we are connecting Broadway with the world, and that we are supporting artists by artists.
Love it.
That would be one of the biggest ones, I think.
Rory, thank you so much for sharing your gifts with the world, your time with me today, and all these amazing things. I
appreciate it.
Such a pleasure to be in the conversation. So everybody out there, go out to Boom, check them out.
Yes,
take a class.
Yes, take a class. We got some dance classes coming up, so it's exciting. We have Thane Jasperson's teaching a Hamilton dance class coming up soon. Woohoo!
Oh my God, that's one of my faves. One of my faves.
Hamilton?
Yes, one of my faves.
He's the original Seabury in the show.
Okay.
And he's actually one of the last remaining original cast members, well, before COVID, that was in the show. Still, 4 years later.
So let's make a commitment that you come back in 6 months.
6
and
months.
We'll see how far Boom has gone to the next level, and who and what your experiences are like. So thank you again, Rory. Enjoy the weekend in beautiful Dublin.
You too. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks to everybody for listening to another episode of Warriors at Work and letting us be a part of your warrior journey. You can ask questions and make suggestions for future topics at jc@jeanniecoomber.com. Connect with me personally on LinkedIn and Instagram, and join us on the Warrior Conversations channel on YouTube and at the Warrior Magic Community page on Facebook. You can find links to all these places on my website, jeanniecoomber.com, and most importantly, be sure to tell friends about us, subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Spreaker, and Spotify. It helps others find the show and puts more warrior magic out into the world.